At a private shooting range, a black gatekeeper hears a scream and discovers a white man badly injured. Without hesitation, she rushes to his aid, ignoring the whispers around her and the harsh warning from her manager. Days later, fired and forgotten, she sits in quiet despair beside her son when a mysterious phone call comes in. What she doesn't know is that the man she saved is a billionaire, and he's about to change her life forever. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. It was just past 6:00 a.m. on a Thursday morning when the low hum of fluorescent lights flickered awake inside the sprawling training facility on the outskirts of Macon, Georgia. The air smelled faintly of gunpowder and rubber soles, scents left behind from the prior evening's firearm exercises. Out in the open yard, the dew clung to the hard-packed dirt, and rows of empty target boards stood like ghosts waiting for war. In the far corner of the compound, behind the reception hall where wealthy clients would soon sip coffee and prepare for private tactical sessions, a small figure moved quietly along the baseboards with a mop in hand. Her name was Raina Mitchell, and no one ever really looked at her twice. She wore a gray utility jumpsuit with her sleeves rolled up to the elbow, revealing deep brown arms marked not by age but by perseverance. Her natural curls were pulled back into a tight, no-nonsense bun. Her eyes, soft, alert, and full of stories she never told, scanned the floor instinctively for spots missed. She worked in rhythm, precise and focused, like someone who used to do something else, nothing more. But no one here asked about her past. The managers didn't care, and the trainees barely noticed her. To them, she was just the cleaning lady, another black woman in a uniform, invisible in a place built for status and performance. As she scrubbed a scuff mark near the hallway where the locker rooms met the weapons bay, Raina paused. She winced and pressed a hand to her lower back. The pain had been sharper lately, probably from lifting those boxes of ammo 2 days ago. She exhaled slowly, whispered to herself, "Just a few more hours," then resumed. From the office down the hall, a man in a crisp polo shirt glanced at her through the window. His name was Derek, the floor supervisor. His expression wasn't hostile, just indifferent. The kind of look people give when they believe you're furniture that happens to breathe. "Mrs. Mitchell," he called out, not looking up from his tablet, "when you're done there, the west perimeter walkway needs a sweep. Board members might do a walkthrough later." His tone was flat, transactional. Raina turned slightly, nodded. "Yes, sir," she said with measured politeness. Her voice was calm, low, and clear, without tremble, but also without warmth. She had long stopped trying to impress anyone here. As she walked past the training range windows, she caught a glimpse of herself reflected in the glass. Her expression was unreadable, maybe tired, maybe resigned. But somewhere behind those eyes was still a flicker of resolve, a glint she hadn't entirely lost. Something deeper than survival, something like purpose. She used to be someone else, someone they wouldn't have dared speak down to, but that chapter was closed, at least for now. As she stepped outside to gather the trash bins near the edge of the gravel perimeter, a faint breeze lifted the Georgia dust. The sky was pale pink, the kind of sky that made you believe something new might still be possible, if only for a moment. She stopped to wipe sweat from her brow, her eyes drifting toward the open range where targets had been left riddled with holes. Then she heard it, a burst of frantic shouting. And just like that, everything began to change. The shouting grew louder, male voices, urgent, startled. Raina's hand tightened around the trash bin handle as she turned instinctively toward the source. The gun range, that was where it came from. She could see, just beyond the row of parked black SUVs, a sudden gathering of men in khaki tactical wear, forming a circle. Some stood frozen, others whispered in disbelief. One voice shouted, "Call an ambulance," while another barked, "Don't touch him." She dropped the trash bin where it was, dust trailing behind her as her feet pounded toward the group. A strange heaviness filled her chest. Not fear, not yet, but something deeper. A knowing. As she pushed through the crowd, she heard gasps ripple as if her very presence was unwelcome. Then she saw him. Lying flat on his back, surrounded by gravel, was a middle-aged white man in civilian clothes, blood seeping through the side of his tan jacket, his breaths shallow and irregular. A rifle lay discarded several feet away. No one dared kneel beside him. Raina's body moved before her thoughts could catch up. She dropped to her knees next to him, eyes scanning the wound, assessing depth, direction, severity. One hand pressed firmly to the bleeding side, the other reached toward his neck. Weak pulse. Skin pale, he was slipping. A voice above her barked, "Ma'am, back away, now." It was Derek. His face was flushed, jaw tight. "You're not authorized. Get security." She didn't move. Her jaw set, lips pressed into a determined line. "He's going into hypovolemic shock. If I don't compress this now, he'll be gone in minutes," she said, her voice sharp, steady, and loud enough to cut through the noise. "You want a scandal or a corpse?" The group hesitated. Some looked to Derek, others looked to each other, uncertain. One younger trainee stepped forward hesitantly but said nothing. Marina didn't wait for approval. She pulled off her work shirt in one motion, revealing a white undershirt beneath, and folded the garment into a makeshift dressing. Blood soaked through it instantly. She pressed harder. The man groaned in pain, his eyes fluttering, confused. She leaned closer, whispered into his ear, "Stay with me. I've got you." "Hell needs a medevac," someone in the back muttered. "No time." Raina turned her head toward the group, eyes blazing. "Get gauze, tourniquet, anything, now!" Her tone wasn't a request. It was a command. And for the first time someone listened. A guard sprinted toward the supply tent. Derek stepped closer, his voice a whisper, coated in venom. "You're way out of line." Raina didn't look up. "I'm trying to keep a man alive. Are you?" He had no answer. Within seconds, someone returned with supplies. She worked with methodical urgency, binding the wound, stabilizing the pressure, adjusting his posture to reduce bleeding. Her hands moved like she'd done this 100 times, because she had. Just not here. Not anymore. The man beneath her was fading, but alive. A siren wailed in the distance. Raina's voice softened. "Just hold on. You're going to make it." As the ambulance screeched to a halt near the range, paramedics jumped out, but paused when they saw her. One of them hesitated, eyes flicking to Derek, then back to Raina. She stood, stepped back slowly, her hands coated in blood. "Vitals are fading, but he's stable enough to move. I packed the wound tight, but he needs transfusion, stat," she said, rattling off clinical notes as if she'd never left medicine. The paramedic blinked, then nodded. As they lifted the injured man onto the gurney, someone in the crowd began clapping, but it quickly died when Derek turned and glared. Silence returned. Raina stood there for a moment, heart still pounding, sweat beading her forehead. Around her, the crowd slowly dispersed, murmuring. No one thanked her. No one spoke to her. As the ambulance pulled away, dust in its wake, she looked down at her hands, blood still warm, sticky. But her eyes were clear. She had done the right thing, but something in the air told her she would pay for it. The morning after the ambulance had vanished beyond the trees, Raina stood outside the operations trailer in her gray jumpsuit, the one she'd scrubbed clean the night before, though the stains never quite came out. Her knuckles were raw, her back ached, but her head was held high. She knew what was coming. The sun barely pierced through the fog that hovered over the facility, casting a gray pallor on the gravel paths and window panes. It was quiet. Too quiet. Even the trainees seemed to walk softer than usual, as if something heavy pressed down on the air. Inside the trailer, Derek sat behind his desk, arms crossed. He didn't offer her a seat. "Mrs. Mitchell," he began, tone clipped and cold, "you violated site protocols by interfering with a live training emergency. We have procedures in place, chain of command. You disregarded all of them." His eyes didn't meet hers as he spoke. They never had. Raina didn't flinch. Her voice was calm, low. "And if I hadn't stepped in, that man would be dead. You know that." Derek looked up then, expression unreadable. "That's not the point. You're not licensed. You're not staff. You're a janitorial contractor. Your job is to clean, not to play hero." His words struck like a slap. Controlled, deliberate. "Effective immediately, your contract is terminated." There was no discussion, no review, no acknowledgement, not of her actions, not of the life she had saved. Just a piece of paper slid across the table. Her final paycheck clipped to the corner, her name misspelled on the envelope. She took it without a word. Her hands didn't shake, her face didn't change, but her chest burned. Outside, she walked past the training field again. A few men glanced up as she passed, some looked away, one nodded faintly but said nothing. Raina didn't stop, didn't wait for thanks. She knew better. By noon she was back in her apartment on the east side of Macon. Unit 3B, in a weathered complex with paint peeling from the railings and an old woman 2 doors down who played gospel radio on full volume every Sunday. Jalen was still at school. She sat on the edge of their twin mattress, her shoes still on, and stared at the ceiling. The silence was deafening. Hours passed. She checked the job boards online, filled out 3 applications, got 2 instant rejections. One didn't respond at all. Her phone buzzed once. An automated reminder about a past due utility bill. That night, as rain tapped gently on the window pane, Jalen curled beside her on the couch with a leftover bowl of boxed mac and cheese. He looked up with wide eyes and asked, "Did you help that man, Mama, the one from the range?" Raina stroked his curls slowly. "Yes, baby, I did." "Then why do you look sad?" She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Because sometimes doing the right thing doesn't mean people will do right by you." He leaned against her chest, small arms wrapping around her waist. "I'm proud of you anyway." She held him tighter. That small voice in the dark was enough, for now. But the storm outside wasn't just weather. Something was coming, she could feel it. And it would start with a phone call. The morning air felt colder than usual as Raina stood outside the operations trailer, her gray jumpsuit still damp around the sleeves from the early morning mist. The gravel beneath her feet crunched softly as she shifted her weight, arms crossed against her chest. The compound had returned to its usual rhythm. Orders barked, boots marching, the clatter of metal against concrete, but there was a strange quietness in how people looked at her now, if they looked at all. She was summoned just after 9 o'clock, no explanation, just a short call from the receptionist telling her to report to the trailer. Inside, Derek sat behind his oversized desk, his uniform too crisp for someone who'd never seen combat. The blinds were closed, the fluorescent lights humming above them. He didn't ask her to sit. "I'll make this short," he said, eyes locked on a report in front of him instead of her. "Yesterday you caused a disruption, a serious one." Raina said nothing. She simply watched him, steady, unreadable. "You may think you helped," Derek continued, voice tight, "but what you did, kneeling over that man, yelling orders, ignoring my instructions, put this facility at risk. I told you to back away, you didn't." "I was keeping him alive," she replied quietly, her voice low and even, with a trace of exhaustion that didn't mask her conviction. "And you were more worried about optics than the man bleeding out on the ground." That made him look up. Derek's jaw clenched. "You don't get it, do you? That man wasn't supposed to be injured. This place is private, discreet. The kind of clients we get. They pay to train in peace. You think I wanted paramedics and cops crawling around the site? You think I wanted press?" Her eyebrows rose slightly. "So you wanted to get him out, quietly, even if he died on the way?" "I wanted to avoid a scandal," he snapped. "He dies here. This whole operation gets shut down. Headlines, lawsuits, investors walking out. But you," he pointed at her, stabbing the air, "you just had to play hero. You didn't listen. You made a scene." Raina's voice dropped to a near whisper. "I saved his life. And now I'm saving this facility," Derek replied coldly. "Effective immediately. You're terminated. You can collect your things and leave the premises today." He slid an envelope across the desk without ceremony. Her name was spelled wrong. She stared at the envelope, then back at him. Her face betrayed nothing. No shock, no anger. Just the quiet resignation of someone who'd seen this kind of injustice before, who'd lived through it more than once. Outside the trailer, she walked with slow, deliberate steps. Her boots kicked up dust, but her head remained high. A few workers glanced up from their stations, some curious, some sympathetic, but no one said a word. The same silence as always. Silence that knew, but never stood. By early afternoon, she was back home in Unit 3B. The old radiator hissed as it warmed up, the faint scent of rust and lemon cleaner lingering in the air. Jalem was at school. She sat alone on the sagging couch, the envelope still unopened on the table beside her. She stared ahead, the apartment quiet except for the ticking wall clock. Her hands, now clean of blood, rested in her lap, but the memory of that man's fading breath still clung to her skin. Her phone buzzed with another rejection email. The rest of the world moved on. Later that evening, with Jalem curled beside her, his small fingers tracing invisible patterns on her arm, he looked up and asked, "Mama, you saved him, right?" "I tried," she answered softly, brushing his cheek with her thumb. "Then why'd they fire you?" She hesitated, then said, "Because some people fear bad press more than they value a life." He didn't understand all the words, but he understood the weight. He nestled closer. Outside, the sky was darkening. Thunder rolled faintly in the distance, and then, just as the clock struck 8:17, her phone lit up. A call from an unknown number. The phone's sharp buzz cut through the silence like a blade. Rihanna blinked, her fingers instinctively tightening around Jalen's back. He stirred slightly, but didn't wake. The screen glowed in the dimness of the living room, displaying a private number, no name, no ID, just that quiet, persistent vibration against the worn coffee table. She hesitated. Her instinct told her to let it ring out. Calls at this hour rarely brought anything good. But something else, something unexplainable, tugged at her gut. Slowly, carefully, she reached for it, whispering more to herself than to anyone else. "Let's see who dares at this hour." "Hello?" Her voice was guarded, low. A smooth baritone responded immediately, crisp but oddly warm. "Miss Raina Mitchell?" She straightened in her seat. "Yes, who's speaking?" "This is Thomas Fairchild. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Jonathan Regan." Her heart skipped. The name struck like a drumbeat, one she hadn't expected to hear again. She said nothing for a moment, eyes narrowing with a mixture of confusion and caution. Then, finally, "The man from the range?" "Yes, ma'am. The man whose life you likely saved." A long pause. Her voice, when it came, was steady. "How does he even know who I am?" There was a soft chuckle on the line. "Mr. Regan may be many things, but unaware is not one of them. Once he was stabilized, he insisted on knowing what happened before the ambulance arrived. Your name came up repeatedly. He's a man who doesn't forget things, especially not people who defy orders to do the right thing." Raina looked down at Jalem sleeping against her side, 100 questions forming in her mind. "Where are you calling?" she asked, trying to sound neutral but failing to mask the faint edge of disbelief. "Mr. Regan would like to speak with you, in person, tomorrow morning." Her eyebrows furrowed. "Why?" "That's something he prefers to discuss face to face. He's asked us to send a car. If you're available, the vehicle will arrive at 9 o'clock IMing. It will be a black Lincoln license ending in 781. No need to prepare anything. Just bring yourself." She leaned forward slightly, elbow on her knee, pinching the bridge of her nose. "I'm not sure I understand what this is." "I know, ma'am, but trust me, this meeting is in your favor. He is grateful. Very much so." Before she could respond, the line disconnected. No goodbye. Just silence. For several seconds, Rihanna sat frozen, phone still pressed to her ear, the faint buzz of static now gone. Her thoughts swirled. Gratitude, suspicion, confusion, all tightening into a knot behind her ribs. Then she looked down at Jalem again. His hand, still resting on her arm, twitched in sleep. She exhaled slowly. The next morning came fast. The city still wore its early light like a half-butted coat as Raina stood by the curb outside her apartment building. Jalen had already boarded his school bus, his kiss on her cheek still lingering as if it were a promise. At precisely 8:59, a sleek black Lincoln coasted to a quiet stop in front of her. A suited driver stepped out, wordless, and opened the rear door. She hesitated only for a second. Then she stepped inside. And just like that, the world she thought had closed its doors for good began to open again. The car moved like it had no weight, gliding through Macon's winding streets and out onto a stretch of country road flanked by tall oaks and white fences. Raina sat in the back seat, silent, hands folded in her lap, eyes scanning the passing scenery as if trying to ground herself in something familiar. Her reflection in the tinted glass stared back, composed, alert, but undeniably tense. She hadn't worn anything special, just dark slacks and a navy blouse. Still, she sat with the quiet dignity of someone who refused to let uncertainty shake her. After nearly 30 minutes, the road curved sharply, revealing iron gates at the end of a long, manicured driveway. The vehicle paused only long enough for a security camera to scan, then the gates parted without a sound. Beyond them stood an estate that seemed plucked from another world. It wasn't flashy, but it was enormous. Stone columns, shuttered windows, and a wraparound porch that stretched like an embrace. The lawn looked like it had never known a weed. A house built not for show, but for permanence. The car pulled to a stop under the covered entrance. The driver stepped out and opened the door without a word. Raina exited slowly, her boots pressing into the cobblestone. A butler in a gray suit emerged from the entryway. He nodded politely. "Mr. Mitchell, please follow me. Mr. Reagan is expecting you." She followed him down a wide corridor lined with oil paintings in muted light. The air smelled faintly of old books and lemon polish. Every step echoed. As they reached a sunroom filled with tall windows and golden morning light, the butler paused. "He's just inside." Raina stepped through the open doorway. Seated in a high-backed armchair, legs crossed, was the man she'd saved. He looked different now, no longer pale and weak, but composed, dressed in a dark sweater and slacks, a cane resting lightly beside him. His hair was silvery blonde, combed back, and his pale blue eyes fixed on her with quiet intensity. "Miss Mitchell," he said, voice gravelly but steady, with a hint of southern grace. "I've been hoping to meet you properly." She inclined her head. "You're looking better than the last time I saw you." A corner of his mouth twitched into a smile. "Thanks to you. Please, have a seat." She did, carefully, her posture guarded but polite. Her eyes never left his. "I imagine this is strange for you," he began. "Being brought here. The call. The car. The house?" "You could say that," she replied evenly. He leaned forward slightly. "I'm not a man who often ends up helpless on a dirt field with a bullet in his side. That morning, I wasn't supposed to be there at all. I was having a bad week and needed something to clear my head. I used to train at that facility often. Quiet place, discreet clientele, as I'm sure you noticed." Her expression didn't change. "I noticed a lot." He nodded slowly, acknowledging the subtext. "After I came to in the hospital, I asked to know everything. Who helped me? Who stopped the bleeding? Who ignored the orders? Your name came up more than once." She remained silent, letting him speak. "My people dug into your background. I hope you're not offended. It's a habit of mine. Turns out you weren't always mopping floors." At that, her jaw tightened. He caught it. "You were a trauma physician, Johns Hopkins trained, practiced for 7 years, then dismissed." She looked him square in the eye. "I was let go because I refused to let a patient die over an insurance status. My chief didn't like that. He found a way to make it look like negligence. I fought it. Lost. No hospital would touch me after that." Jonathan Reagan didn't flinch. "Then I'm glad you were the one who found me." He stood slowly, favoring his side slightly, and moved to a small table. He poured 2 glasses of water and offered one to her. She didn't take it. "I didn't bring you here to thank you with words," he said. "Gratitude is cheap when spoken. I believe in action." She narrowed her eyes slightly. "What kind of action?" He returned to his chair. "I want to offer you 2 choices. First, come work for me as my personal physician. You'll be well paid, private, safe. You'll never have to clean another floor." She remained still. "And the second?" "The second is harder. I run a medical non-profit. Underfunded, overworked, deeply committed. We serve people with nowhere else to go. People like the one you once lost your career for. I want you to join it. It pays less, much less, but it needs someone like you." Silence hung between them, the kind of silence that tested the bones of a person. Then Raina spoke. Her voice was soft but unshakable. "I didn't save your life to be rewarded. I did it because it was right. But if you're offering me a way to keep doing what's right, then that's what I choose." Jonathan Reagan nodded once, slowly. "I hoped you would." She stood. "Then when do I start?" He smiled for the first time, not out of politeness, but respect. "Tomorrow morning, and I suggest you get some rest. It's going to be a long road." The first weeks were hard. The kind of hard that left you sore in places no one saw and tired in a way no sleep could fix. The clinic Regan had spoken of was nothing like the pristine hospital wings Raina once walked. It was housed in a converted church basement on the south side of Atlanta, where the paint peeled from the ceiling and the waiting room chairs were mismatched donations. There were no assistants in crisp uniforms, no electronic records, no budget for mistakes, just people. Real people, lining up from dawn, clutching folders and prayers, hoping someone would care enough to see them. And Raina did. She saw them all. At first the team was wary. Some had read about her old case, whispered things about reputations and ruined careers. But reputations didn't matter when a child was wheezing through an asthma attack or when a single mother showed up with a raging fever and a toddler on her hip. Raina worked quietly, relentlessly, sleeves rolled up, hands steady, heart open. She remembered every name, every story, every scar, then slowly. Her presence became the spine of the clinic. Systems improved, donations increased, volunteers returned. They trusted her, not because of where she had come from, but because of how she stood when the work needed doing. Regan visited the site once, standing at the doorway in tailored clothes that didn't belong there. He watched as Raina held the hand of an elderly man too scared to speak, as she taught a young nurse how to find a vein without bruising. He didn't say much that day, but before he left, he turned to his assistant and murmured, "Put her in charge." Months passed. The clinic expanded into 2 more neighborhoods. Grants flowed in. Rainey was named director without a ceremony, but everyone knew the moment it became true. She didn't ask for a title. She simply accepted the weight and carried it. And still, every evening, she came home to Unit 3B. Jalen would run to the door with drawings and stories from school. They'd sit at the table and eat whatever they could afford, sometimes takeout, sometimes toast. But there was laughter now, and light. One night, after Jalen had gone to bed, Raina stood by the window and looked out across the parking lot, the city glowing beyond it. Her reflection stared back, tired, yes, older, maybe, but stronger, whole. She didn't miss the hospital. She didn't miss the paychecks or the polished halls. What she missed was purpose. And now she had more than she ever imagined. A year to the day after she had knelt beside Regan on the training field, the clinic held a community celebration. Not a gala, just a potluck, folded chairs and paper plates. Jalen wore a little clip-on tie. Raina brought peach cobbler. Regan arrived late, leaning on a cane but smiling with real warmth. When he took the microphone, "I wouldn't be here if not for one woman," he said simply. "And many of you wouldn't be either. She didn't ask for recognition, but she built this place with her hands, with her heart. He turned toward her. Raina Mitchell. The room erupted into applause. Jalen clapped the loudest. Raina stood, unsure whether to wave or hide. She did neither. She just smiled. The kind of smile that only comes when the fight was worth it. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the trees and families packed up casseroles and folding chairs, Raina stood outside the clinic and looked around. Children ran between cars. Nurses hugged patients goodbye. A woman she'd treated for breast cancer slipped a small bracelet into her hand, whispering, "For everything you gave." Jonathan Reagan stepped up beside her. "You chose the hard road," he said softly. She glanced at him, eyes warm. "It's the only one that goes anywhere worth being." He nodded. "You know, I used to think power was something you held over people. You showed me it's something you give." They stood there for a moment, two people from opposite ends of a world that rarely let them meet. And yet here they were, forever connected by a choice she made on a gravel range no one remembered now but her. That night, back at home, Jalen asked before bed, "Do you think that man remembers what you did for him?" Raina smiled, tucking the blanket under his chin. "He remembers. But what matters more is that I remember who I am." He nodded, eyes heavy with sleep. "I'm glad you're my mom." She turned off the light, whispering, "Me too, baby." Outside, the stars blinked above Unit 3B. The night was quiet, whole. Then in the heart of a woman once cast aside, a new chapter had begun, not written by others, not taken away, but hers. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.